is absurd what we have happened here. We have gone back 8 to 10 years in our race relationships because of what Barack Obama and Eric Holder and the President Attorney General and Hillary Clinton have done, which is they jump on immediately on these incidents and try to politicize them.
Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani saying that President Obama's time in the White House has not improved race relations as police shootings and violent protests in Charlotte and to a lesser degree in Tulsa reignite the discussion about police and the communities they serve. Let's discuss it now with our panel. From Newsmax Washington, we welcome in Payton. She's a staff writer for The Federalist. And joining us from Newsmax New York, one of our faves, even though we seldom see eye to eye, left-leaning radio and TV commentator Ellis Henican. Our thanks to you both. Bree, when Mr. Obama became president, it was said that we were in a post-racial America. But now, after all this time, is President Obama our most racial president?
I think you're right that racial tensions and racial divisions certainly have escalated and increased, and now they're at a point that could arguably be is like the way it was during the early 90s, during the Rodney King riots. So I think definitely it was post-racial America before Barack Obama, and now the tensions are really high, and we're having incidents like Charlotte where people are rioting. So I think definitely there is a correlation between those two things, and I think the common factor is the Obama administration and a lot of those in his executive branch who he has appointed, like Eric Holder, as you said.
Well, I hope we're not blaming the black guy again. Is that where this is going, J.D.?
No,
all
not
of a
at
sudden,
all.
now we have a black president. Now we have a black president, so it's got to be his fault, right? By the way, it is truly rich to put up Rudy Giuliani to lecture Americans about fine racial relations. His 8 years as the mayor of New York were probably the worst, most hostile, racially divided time, certainly in the modern generations in this city. And I just got to point out that Rudy is not a very good messenger on that point.
Well, you have a unique point of view. Go ahead, Bree.
That's not a unique point of view. You go interview anybody in New York you want. Those are the worst racial times in modern era in New York. I don't think Bree's going to dispute that, J.D. I'm surprised you would dispute.
Well, I'll be happy, but since Bree's the guest, I'll let her have first crack. Go ahead, Bree.
Sure. A lot of people from New York will say that during Rudy Giuliani's tenure, crime went down significantly and the city was a lot safer. So I think a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about Rudy Giuliani, and I think that many would definitely say that he brought law and order to the city during the crack.
I didn't say law and order,
crisis.
Bree. Bree, I wasn't talking about law and order. He clearly reduced crime dramatically, but at the cost of huge and hostile racial relations.
Oh, okay, so in the world of Ellis,
wait,
this is kind of curious. So Ellis, your barometer is not making the community safe. It's having some sort of welcome wagon. Well, take a look at what we have now, where the situation's 180 nationally, courtesy of Mr. Obama. And it's not blaming a black guy, because I served with black guys who are straight up on the racial questions. But he is
Can we post some facts here, J.D.?
You bet.
How about some facts here? Listen, first of all, there are two separate issues. It is not the case, by the way, that crime has risen. Crime is at historic lows at this point in our country. In fact, dramatically lower than in the St. and Giuliani years.
Go ahead, Bree.
You're completely right that nationally crime has decreased significantly. However, there are several cities where the homicide rates have increased drastically, and I think we should be talking about Chicago right now and what's happening there. Okay, so the murder and homicide rates have increased significantly, and most of those murders are black on black crime, and that's something that we often don't talk about or like to shy away from, and something that Black Lives Matter don't like to talk about or address either. So I think that's another component to this overall picture that we need to be talking about, and that we need to be saying that racial tensions do lead to violence and instability and peaks in crime. Okay, so I think it's a misunderstanding or a conflation or a misstatement to say that now with all the racial tensions and spike in certain pockets of the country and the homicide rate, I think it's foolish to ignore that.
And one of the reasons we wanted you both on here,
Ellis, this is simple.
go ahead, very quickly.
Let me say this as simply as I can. Let me see if I can review the facts. Crime is at almost all-time lows in this country. At the same time, there is some pockets of racial uproar that we really do need to deal with. And those things can both be true at the same time. It's not the same equation as to whether we have good racial relations, whether we have decent crime rates, whether there are some pockets, yeah, there are some cities where it's up high, and there are many cities, including New York and Washington, where you and I are, where there have been precipitous, dramatic decreases in crime. I mean, those are just the facts. Can't we get our hands around that?
And the inescapable fact is 3,000 gun murders in Chicago. Now, one of the reasons we wanted you both on, one of the reasons we wanted you both on is because you have two very different opinions. It is worth noting that the two major candidates for president likewise have a different approach to the notion of just where we are headed. Let's listen to both of them, and then we'll ask for your reactions.
There is still much we don't know about what happened in both incidents, but we do know that we have 2 more names to add to a list of African Americans killed by police officers in these encounters. It's unbearable, and it needs to become intolerable.
There is no compassion in tolerating lawless conduct. Crime and violence is an attack on the poor and will never be accepted in a Trump administration.
So, Bree, your reaction to those very different viewpoints?
I think it's a mistake to conflate the 2 incidents that occurred, one in Tulsa and one in Charlotte, because the circumstances surrounding both of those shootings are very different. In one situation, the situation in Tulsa, the police officer has been charged for her actions for shooting that individual, who largely had his hands up for most of that time. But in Charlotte, the suspect had, was brandishing a weapon and was pointing it towards police officers and was being unruly. So I think it really is a mistake to talk about both of those incidents and talk about them like, oh, there are 2 more names on the list of individuals who the police have committed an injustice towards. And I think that by her saying that, I think she is stoking racial tensions, and I think that she is fueling rhetoric that is not only incorrect, but it's also dangerous.
Ellis, what about the 2 different statements from Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Trump?
Well, Bree's 100% right. I mean, the evidence that we have so far is that they're very different cases, and it's a mistake on either side for Donald Trump to essentially, in a reflexive, knee-jerk kind of way, defend the cops in every single instance, and for some street activists to defend be opposed to the cops in every single instance. I mean, there are good police shootings and bad police shootings, and we ought to be upset about the bad ones, and we ought to defend the cops and the good ones. I mean, these are evidence-based issues.
Let us turn then to some curious comments that came from the brother of Keith Lamont Scott in Charlotte. Listen as this man was walking away from the camera and what he had to say about white people.
You just know that all white people are devils.
And make sure you air that one.
Air that.
Don't take that.
All white cops are devils and white people.
All white cops and people are devils. Reviewing the situation in Charlotte, black police chief, black police officer, and black man who apparently did not follow the instructions of the black police officer, and yet it's white folks and white cops who are blank devils. Bree, are we seeing the triumph of a narrative that has been foisted upon the African-American community by Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I definitely think that's what we're seeing. I think a lot of the narrative that the Black Lives Matter movement perpetuates is false and incorrect, and I think that it is a mistake, as you pointed out, to take it and run with it in cases where that statement doesn't apply. And I think that we do need to pause and take a breath, and we do need to learn how to have better reactions in situations like this. Although I think that we should probably give his brother some grace in that instance. He was speaking in the heat of the moment after his brother was just shot and killed. So, I think people in a situation like that or in a moment like that, will just say the first thing that comes to their minds and not necessarily believe it or not necessarily think it. So I think, that was an incredibly tough situation for him, and he said something that is wrong and that he probably shouldn't have said. But I think we can, give him a little bit of grace there.
Well, I think that point is well taken, but even with that grace offered to offer that reflexive comment about Caucasians, Ellis, we'll give you the last word, 40 seconds.
all white people are not devils, okay? Let's be clear about that. Of course, that's a stupid thing to say. It's an ignorant thing to say. I don't know if you want to call it racist, but it's you know, you understand where it comes from, I guess. Where I would take issue with you guys is trying to somehow pin some stupid comment on the street to a movement as broad and frankly as diverse as Black Lives Matter. I mean, a lot of people associate with it, right? And in the same way, some people under the Tea Party banner said stuff that was pretty indefensible. Some people under the Black Lives banner have used that brand to express views that are not very open-minded or smart. But by and large, they do have centrally a good point, which was that we have for too long taken a different reaction when blacks are victims of these violence and poor people are the victims of this kind of state violence. And you know what? It's worth remembering that those lives really do matter. We should all be able to agree on that, shouldn't we?
And we will have to leave it there. Ellis and Bree, thank you very much. Up next, Joe Conason.